The coronavirus is still wreaking havoc across the world, and the world's leaders, all of whom have turned to the capitalist ideology for guidance, have started shifting the blame away from themselves and their policies, but also away from the failure of capitalism to serve the needs of humanity in such a crisis. Just as capitalism has been the cause of the previous financial crisis, so it is with the coming global recession, yet apologists for capitalism will attempt to blame the virus or even the ordinary people. It was none other than the capitalist elite who drowned the world in debt to save them from the 2008 crisis, and it is they who are doing the same again. Increasing debt only magnifies the pain that will be caused when the bubble finally bursts. Not only is the boom-bust cycle and the increasingly deadly crashes are a stark reminder of capitalism's utter failures, but so is the irony of the leaders of the free world imposing economic policies that socialists would be proud of upon their people in an attempt to soften their fall. The capitalists themselves, however, have ensured that the interests were the first consideration, many of whom are profiting handsomely from the massive government bailouts just as they did in 2009, thus offering government grants to businesses to accommodate cash flow, whilst in reality this does not reach the affected workers or certain businesses, since they do not fit into a criterion set by the government. Rather, the major corporations are profiting from this disorder.
Following criticism for failing to provide support for the 5 million self-employed and freelance workers in the UK, the government has announced the Coronavirus Self-Employment Income Support Scheme. What does this mean for the self-employed? Well, if you're self-employed, you'll now be able to apply for a grant worth up to 80% of your average monthly profits. How much will you be entitled to? Up to £2,500 a month. The amount of money you receive will be based on your average monthly profits from the last 3 years, although the grant will be tax deductible and will need to be declared on tax returns by January 2022. Who qualifies for the grant? The scheme is open to those who earn under £50,000 a year and who get at least half their income from self-employment, as registered on the 2019-2020 tax return. But it does not cover those who became self-employed recently, so after April 2019. When will you receive the money? The money, which can be backdated to March, will be paid in a lump sum into people's banks, but this will not happen until June. In the meantime, self-employed people will now be able to access universal credit in full. Will you still be able to work? Yes, unlike the employee scheme, self-employed workers will still be able to work. The government hope that this package will ensure that everyone gets the support they need during the coronavirus crisis.
The globalized supply chains are now bearing the brunt of the slowdown in the West as capitalist companies try to wiggle out of the contractual obligations, cutting prices, refusing to pay owed money, and cancelling orders on already manufactured goods. The poor workers of Bangladesh, Pakistan and Jordan, for example, are expected to suffer the consequences to save the corporations of the Western world. Aside from wrecking the already failing economy, capitalism is responsible for global neglect of adequate healthcare, deliberate lack of preparedness for such a pandemic, and the dithering of politicians and advisors to take early decisive actions of testing and quarantine to stem the spread of the disease before it got out of control, while introducing half-baked legislations and obstructing free trade and imports only to profit from unfortunate deaths. As always with capitalist thinkers, the virus was someone else's problem, either as a result of nationalism, racism or petty greed and rivalry. Throughout this coronavirus crisis, the lack of preparedness and equipment in hospitals have been at the center of decision making. whether that be of testing kits, protective equipment, or intensive care machinery. In Britain, the policymakers are resigned to the majority of the population becoming infected and have instead focused on flattening the curve to spread out the infections so as not to overburden the hospitals. Indeed, the slogan to rally the people's support has been to save the NHS. The ordinary people who care for their neighbours have been making up for the government's failures by sewing and making protective equipment in their own houses, which the media has praised, but mainstream journalists have utterly failed to account the government on why this is even necessary, why mass testing has been delayed, or why petty corporate interests were more important than early mass testing and quarantine. Now the talk of exit strategies has started, and it is abundantly clear that capitalism has no strategy, and that the only sensible way forward for the world is to exit from capitalism. The apologists who have often talked of softening the rough edges to capitalism are even beginning to realize that the rot at the heart of the ideology.
The spread of coronavirus has had a devastating impact on many sectors, with some being brought to their knees. But as with any crisis, others are rubbing their hands with glee. These are the sectors that stand to win from the pandemic, and those who have already begun cashing in. Companies are having to change the way they work, and fast. If many had been hesitant to make widespread use of video conferencing, they're now scrambling to get to grips with the technology. Zoom Video Communications is one of the companies which has seen its share price boom. Away from work, people are seeking diversions that do not involve travel and human contact, and that's good news for the video game industry. Global mobile game downloads shot up 39% in February, with China accounting for much of the increase. Games like Brain Out and Honor of Kings were among the most popular choices. Concern in China that takeaways could have been cooked or handled by someone with the virus has led to a subtle yet important trend. Hungry families have turned back to good, old-fashioned fresh groceries which they prepare themselves as meals for their loved ones. In Britain, Ocado and Amazon Fresh would represent the most obvious candidates to benefit, with competition provided by big supermarkets like Tesco, Asda and Morrisons. In Britain, Amazon and other e-commerce suppliers already play a critical role in the retail supply chain. That is only likely to expand further if people grow more reluctant to spend time in public places, including supermarkets and shopping centres. All that time spent cooped up indoors is likely to leave many people in need of some brisk exercise. Step forward Peloton Interactive, the provider of live-streamed workouts to an army of millions of bedroom fitness enthusiasts.
It's not yet written.
Video streaming services, including Netflix, Disney+, Comcast, Peacock and HBO Max, are also well insulated from the impact of the disease.
Or from a compatible streaming device.
Any business that finds a cure for the disease is sure to end up posting large profits. Moderna is an American drug discovery and development company hoping to do just that. Another stock that has already benefited from the rising number of cases is Novosit, which produces test kits to diagnose for coronavirus. Aside from curing the virus, people are also desperate to prevent it. Companies producing sanitizers and wipes have obviously seen their shares soar. The valuation of companies manufacturing face masks has also surged. No company will be publicly positive in the current environment, but in several sectors, executives will hope that the epidemic doesn't come to an end quite.
That the world will never again be the same, that globalization has hit a major obstacle, that continued deforestation, pollution and consumption at the capitalist rate, and that greedy corporate prioritization cannot continue unchecked, are all being openly recognized today. God created the heavens and the earth, God created humanity, and God created the virus. Humanity invented the secular creed and its capitalist ideology, which exploited the earth and its people for the benefit of the few, at the expense of everyone else. The virus only exploited the flaws in the secular world order, or the new world order. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent the messenger Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, with guidance for all humankind, which honored the weak and the elderly, mandated care and not neglect, and held back the hand of the tyrant from exploiting and oppression of the kind that we witness today.